Hello, and welcome to Telling Your Asset Management Story. Today, we're speaking with Gregg Clarke, who oversees asset management for an enormous portfolio of campus facilities at the University of Florida. Large universities often function like small cities, with thousands of systems and hundreds of buildings that all need to operate together. Gregg's career began in the trades and has grown into leadership roles focused on long-term infrastructure planning and renewal. In this episode, we'll talk about the challenges of managing facilities at scale, the importance of workforce development, and how data and technology are helping institutions move from reactive maintenance towards more strategic asset management.
Gregg, thanks so much for joining us on Telling Your Asset Management Story. I'm really excited for this conversation and really appreciate your time.
So the asset management, our story here is that we have approximately 1,000 buildings with like 20 million square feet, a variety, academic, research, student life, housing. We have utilities. Our utilities consist of water, wastewater, power, steam, chill water. We also have some satellite facilities. We have our IFAS, which is our Institute of Agricultural Facilities and Science. We have places in every county of Florida. So we have a multitude of buildings and assets throughout Florida. Our totals probably are about $2.5 billion in assets. On the main campus, like I said, we have about 1,000 buildings with 20 million square feet, and we spend a lot of time as far as trying to maintain these assets with the minimal funding that we have, and we prioritize it, right? Unfortunately, we know how resources are between labor and skilled people. It's hard to get. There's a lot of competitiveness in this region as far as people go.
Who are your main competitors, Gregg, if you don't mind me asking?
So we have hospitals. We have the VA hospital, right? We have the North Florida Regional Hospital, and we also have Shands. So just with those, we have quite a few. And then we have a number of biotech firms out in Alachua County that has a big biotech park, and so they're competing for our people. So we're constantly going. And then just with the construction boom, there's a lot of contractors we play swap them out all the time, right? Our guys go, and then we steal some of their guys, and it's a matter of what type of work do you want to do? Do you want a work-life balance, which is what we offer, versus making a lot of money? And so a lot of the younger guys, they go and they make the money, and a lot of the older guys, they want the work-life balance so that they can spend time with their families.
I guess one of the upsides of that is the young guys cut their teeth and get the experience, at somewhere else, and then as they get to that point, maybe you can pull some of those folks in once they've got a bit more experience.
It's funny that you say that, Bill, because we've had a few of our employees where we've trained them, because we have a training center on campus where we have an apprenticeship program where we'll take our custodian grounds teams and develop them into like our trade mechanics. They get the training, then they leave because they see the better dollars on the outside, and then they start to have families, and they realize that, hey, I need the insurance, so here we go. Please let me come back.
Yeah. It's a testament to don't burn any bridges when you leave somewhere, I'm sure, right? So that door doesn't close in the future. That's awesome. So Gregg, one of the things that I find fascinating about folks in facility and asset management is that very few 4 and 5-year-olds are running around going, I want to be in facilities, right? So I love to get a little bit of just an understanding of the journey that you took to get from that 4 or 5-year-old kid who probably wanted to be an astronaut or a baseball player or something like that to the University of Florida.
So it's a unique journey that I had, because I had started out, my dad was an engineer, so he wanted me to go into engineering. And
Like
you
every
know,
engineer wants their kids to do, right?
yes, yes. And but the sad thing was is that he was working, he would leave at 7 in the morning and get home at like 7, 8 o'clock at night. And I said, yeah, I'm not going to do that to my family. So what I ended up doing was I took a hard stance when I got out of high school, and I basically said, no, I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to go in the military. So I went in the military, into the Air Force. And then after that, once I got out, I decided that um, I wanted to work with my hands. So I went to trade school for HVAC, because you learn three, basically three trades. You learned the plumbing, you learned electrical, and you learned the heating and air conditioning portion of things. And so I did that for a few years and opened my own business and had that for about 5 years, and then hit a recession. So then I decided to do some project management for the VA hospital up in Connecticut. And I did that. And then they asked me to go in house to manage their maintenance shops. So I went ahead and I did that, and I did their utility plant and that sort of thing, and managed a bunch of people. Well, then Yale University turned around and called me up and said, hey, are you interested in doing our building automation system, being our manager? I ended up going to Yale. In 2 years, I was brought up to an assistant director. And then I had said to my boss at the time, Rick Maffei, I said, Rick, what is it going to take me to you know, get a promotion? He says, you got to get that paper. I said, what paper is that? He said, oh, you got to get a degree, you're in a higher ed institution. So I decided to go back to school at 40
That's
years
awesome.
old. And
That's awesome.
yeah, and then liked the school, so I ended up going back 2 years after that and getting my MBA. And so then I stayed at Yale for about 18 years. Um, was looking for something different, just because it got kind of mundane, the same thing day in and day out. And so then I applied to 4 schools, got selected here at UF, and the rest is history. I've been here for 12 years now. So,
Wow, that's awesome. What? So the business you started was what business were you in before the recession kind of threw it
so
for?
it was HVAC. So I had a partner. Unfortunately, my partner didn't like to put in the time that I did, so. And I think a lot of people find that when they go into partnerships and stuff, that sometimes it's not an equal effort. And so basically, I asked him if I could buy him out. He wanted the business more than me, so he bought me out. And that's when I ended up going to the VA and just subcontract and project management for a
Interesting.
while.
Yeah, it's Dave Ram. I'm not sure if you listen to Dave Ramsey, but Dave Ramsey always says the only ship that doesn't sail is a partnership. So that's
Yep.
his sort of joke there. Well, that's a really interesting journey, and I love. First of all, thanks for your service, especially this time of year, and your journey, and you're going back to school, later in life. That's what a great story to tell, from where you were to where you are today. So I think that's hopefully inspirational to folks that are listening, and maybe some folks that came up through the trades but are now looking to make that next step. What was the hardest part about going back to school at I think you said you're around 40?
Yeah, it was the time commitment.
Yeah.
So I worked all day, and then I would go to school at night, right?
Yeah.
And minimal vacations, because I had school, and I had kids that were in there. Probably, I think they were like 8 or 9, and so they were doing sports. So it was trying to get to the sports and also do the school work and everything. And so it was interesting. And I think the hardest part is trying to learn again, right? Trying to get used to putting that effort in and understanding. But with that being said, I did end up with like I cum laude out of my bachelor's, and then I
Nice.
ended up having the highest GPA 4.0 with my MBA
Wow.
and got the Wall Street Book Award
Oh,
for
wow.
yeah, for being top of my class.
That's
So
awesome.
that was
Congratulations.
thank you. That was kind of an honor to get that. I mean, what it's done for me here though, Bill, is it's helped me out with understanding, like, the guys respect me because they know I've been in the field. I can help them
Hmm.
out. There's times that I come to work and I will throw a pair of jeans on, work boots, and a t-shirt and go work with the guys and show them some of the things that I learned in the trade. And, we have a really good relationship like that. So throughout the organization, I'm able to have good conversations and have conversations at all levels without creating any heartburn or anything like that with
Sure.
anybody.
Yeah. There's no us and them because you're them with everybody, right?
Yes, sir.
That's a really cool spot. So, Greg, you talked a little bit earlier about kind of some of the asset management challenges, people and funding and things like that. Anything else on kind of those top three things that you're facing, and then how are you tackling them? You and your team and the rest of the UF group.
So, I mean, some of the challenges are we have aged infrastructure, right? We have buildings from 1900s, and we don't have the unlimited resources as far as funding and income, nor do we have, like, all the contractors that can do all this work. So we're limited in the amount of work that we can do a year. And unfortunately, there was a period of time from probably like 2017 until 2022 that we didn't really see much funding, for any deferred renewal, deferred maintenance. And so it kind of hurt us because now we're just basically putting band-aids on equipment, keeping it running. I mean, we still have some equipment here that's from the 70s, air handler units
Hmm.
that are still operational. Um, Sometimes I say the older the better, right? Because
Yeah.
they seem to last a lot longer. And you also have competing priorities, right? I mean, the institution's large. We have research. So going to our administration and saying, "Hey, we need this," and they're looking at doing, some research and, what are we offering for the students. We have to make sure the student experience is good. So it's a matter of doing a balance with a lot of this funding. I mean, some of the other stuff is like your workforce capability, right? I mean, we have some older guys and we have some younger guys. The younger guys, they're good with data and everything like that. They don't have
Hmm.
the past experience, right? So I mean, in
It's a bit of a
today's day,
trade-off, right?
exactly. In today's day
Yeah.
and age, right, you have the older equipment that doesn't really have the technology built in to tell you, hey, this is a fault, right? Here's your fault. It has a microprocessor, and it'll tell you, okay, you look here. It's interesting because I had a refrigerator at my house, brand new refrigerator, where a guy came in. I was having a problem with my ice machine, and what he did was he plugged in his device, and it tells him, here, this is what you need to look at, right? Just like that. Not,
Yeah.
it's where years ago you didn't have that, right? You'd have to take a
Yeah.
multimeter and go around, or thermometers or what have you, and test this equipment. So kind of that's some of the stuff that we have problems with. Now, to overcome those things, we've done a detailed condition assessment, right, for checking out systems and making sure that we understand what the life cycles are. Then we take that data and we kind of compare it to our work order data so that we can evaluate what the equipment's doing, how much it's costing us to maintain, and prioritizing what stuff has to be replaced. And the other thing is that we struggle with a little bit is just the change in programming in the buildings, right? Because there's been such a change in what they do in these buildings today that some of the equipment doesn't either is oversized, undersized, doesn't perform to where it was because it degraded over the years. You have your building envelopes, right? Roofs, buildings. You have your, 100-year-old buildings that need, repointing and leaks coming in from the outside. And then, of course, in Florida, we have the hurricanes. So that doesn't
Yeah.
help us out too much with the horizontal winds and everything.
Yeah.
And, so I think that from that perspective, I think that we're, always working through and trying to strategize and come up with a plan long term to complete some of these problem areas that we can, address. And then so from the then you talk about data systems, right? And we've integrated a lot of stuff, but they're, we're involved in getting a lot of dashboards going so that our technicians can understand what they have to work on, what's a priority, what's not. We have we do a lot of things with our mobile devices, right? We implemented them probably back in about 2010, and we've just keep
Wow. That's
yeah we keep
early. That's early adoption. That's great.
Yep. And we continue to adapt that technology and give them more tools. Like right now, we're integrated. We have what we call a pilot team, which is a performance improvement team that does data analytics and develops a lot of AI platform for us so that we can do some analysis that way. And so what happens is that they've created a dashboard where they can allow the guys to take a look at how long previous calls have taken, what other people have done to those systems just by entering the asset number, right? We have QR codes on all our assets. And so they take a shot of that asset and it brings up all the historical data, whether it's work orders, type of equipment, when parts were replaced. So we can understand and they can understand what they need to do, because we need to create efficiencies here. Unfortunately, we're taking budget cuts. The state funding is getting smaller instead of larger. And so we're also trying to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
know?
Well, and it gets harder and harder with inflation and tariffs and all those other things, injecting uncertainty into how far your budgets can actually go. One thing, Greg, I know you and your team have focused a lot on in the last number of years is utilities and infrastructure. That's something that a lot of folks that I see on campus, it's sort of the forgotten asset class in some cases, right? Because
Yes.
people, you can't see it. The people see the buildings, people are in the buildings. And so they're getting more attention. Could you talk just a little bit to folks about what it was that drove your focus on utilities? Because like I said, a lot of people just, I don't want to say ignore them, but just seem to forget about them because they're out of sight, out of mind.
So when I first got to UF, we were basically some of our utility plants were in pretty sad shape. We needed a lot of work. So what we've been focusing on is both the underground infrastructure and the above ground infrastructure to try and increase efficiencies, and B, make sure that we're not going to hurt anybody or we're not going to shut the place down because of the leaks and everything. Now, some of our steam systems have been installed in the ground, and our chill water, for that fact, probably 75, 80 years, right? And so some of these have been failures. And so when I first got to UF, we had steam and manholes everywhere, right? And so I was like, what is going on here? I said, we're in Florida. This shouldn't be happening. And people were like, oh, well, it's been going on since the 70s, and I'm like, okay, there we go. So we started doing some GPR, and we started checking to understand what line losses were in the system and everything. And come to find out, we had a lot of leaks. I mean, we were only bringing back anywhere from probably 15 to 20% of the condensate
Ooh,
off the steam systems across the whole campus.
wow, that's expensive.
It is. So, I mean, you talk about just wasting money to
Mhm.
pre-treat the water, right? For to put them back in the boilers so you could create steam, because we run 250-pound steam on campus. And so we started doing some major infrastructure work where we're spending on average probably $50 million to $75 million right now. We just finished up a $30 million infrastructure project that was maybe took care of probably 2,000 feet of steam and condensate and chill water, and
Wow.
then you have all the other utilities, right? You have your water, right? You have your sanitary. We have reclaim here because we have our wastewater treatment, which we utilize the reclaim for irrigation. And so we're constantly having to either repair leaks or replace piping so that we don't have the leaks. And so I mean, from our maintenance budget, we're spending anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million just in repair leaks, replacing expansion joints, valve replacements. We have so many manholes on campus that need work that, we've addressed a lot of those by just replacing them, right? And running parallel lines so that we can keep the old lines in service until we can change over to the new. And we have a lot of backfeeds on campus too, where we can backfeed a lot of different utilities just so that we're able to be a little versatile. And so if we do have a leak, we can service buildings, right?
Well, no, that's well, I think that's really that's really interesting information, because as I said, a lot of folks, it's just we fix it when it breaks, and we're not trying to get out ahead of it, and not only managing all that work, but then managing the disruption to campus and keeping campus life going while all of this work is going on. I'm sure it's been a big challenge for you and your team, and but well worth it in the long run from both the cost savings and risk management and planning perspective. So, Greg, you already talked that you guys are already heavily investing in AI today. So looking from beyond today to the next 5 or 10 years, how do you see facility and infrastructure asset management evolving or changing, or even potentially how will it be the same as we move forward in the next decade?
Well, I think, partially, right now in today's day and age, right, we're still in the, reactive and preventative mode. I don't think that we've gotten, I mean, some schools may have gotten into some predictive analysis and things like that, but that's few and far between, to be honest with you. A lot of the schools I talk to don't have that capability at this point. So
a lot are still struggling to get the preventative done that they want to get done, really is what that's my experience. So yeah.
And so I think that, going forward, I think as, AI advances and people start getting used to it and comfortable with it, I've been doing a lot of speaking on AI at different conferences for APA and others. And, the funny thing is that after I speak, people come up to me and say, well, where do you get started? Right. And so you have to kind of, and I tell them it's baby steps. You can't do it, you can't flip a switch and you're there. You just have to start doing it nice and slow. And, you're going to fail at things, and you have to make sure that you just keep on trying, because it's not, there's no secret sauce or anything for this. It's, it's trial by error for a lot of that. So, and then the other thing is like, I think from a data and systems integration standpoint, right? You have a lot of schools don't have the CMMS systems or don't have their assets tracked, which, you have to start to get to that point. You got to digitize your information so that it's electronic versus manual, right?
Yeah. I mean, AI can't do much without data, right? If there's nothing to analyze, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great point.
So I think that, I think at some point in time, you'll probably see digital twins everywhere, right? Where people can wear the VR glasses and walk around. I've tried it a few times with people where they have these companies have glasses that, you put on and you can see the mechanical room. You can walk around and check out pumps, and it'll give you all the data for that equipment, right? It'll tell you when the pump was installed, how old it was, the services that it was done. And so between, talking to, a bunch of different vendors at this point, that's where technology's going, right? Is it's going to be a virtual thing versus so much a physical thing.
Yeah. And the best part is you don't bang your head on the duct when you bend down to look at the nameplate on the piece of equipment, right?
There you go.
Unless they start building that into the glasses too, but I hope not.
Yep. But I think, from a capital planning standpoint, I think that you'll start to see, data-driven modeling versus just I guess it's time to change this, right? Or taken, you'll have a lot more, I think, data and analytics to be able to determine what needs to go and when it needs to go versus right now, it's a lot of times it's reactive because something fails and then you're just replacing it instead of, being proactive about it.
Well, and it costs you 2 to 4 times as much to do it too, right? Because you've got to do it like that. So it's, which only exacerbates the budget issue. So no, that's, I certainly think that data, the ability to aggregate so much more data efficiently is there. I think the challenge will be getting the data, right? Because as you say, a lot of folks are still working with stuff in people's heads or stuff on drawings and things like that. But it's definitely coming for sure. So
The other thing is that like your workforce and the skill set, right? I think like we had talked about earlier is that we had said how you have your older guys that are old school that don't really experience and don't like a lot of data and technology. It's interesting. I had when we did when we went to the mobile devices, a couple of my plumbers, they were like, yeah, no, my fingers are too fat. That's not going to work, And those were probably the guys that took me the longest, right? It took me like probably 12 to 18 months to really get them comfortable. And then once they were comfortable, it was like, hey, this is great technology. Thank you. But it took them that long where, you have the younger guys, they're growing up with electronics. They're growing up with these devices, right? These gaming systems that, are phenomenal that they can, you put them in front of a screen like that and everything, they can make things work, but they're also the guys that need those prompts to say, hey, go look at this point because this is your problem type of thing, where they're not like the older guys that can go out and troubleshoot old school.
Yeah, they just hear it. They just hear it, right? Or they smell something and they know what's wrong. That's the stuff that AI is never going to replace, right? Is that intuition and that understanding and things like that. So,
and that's a problem for us because of the type of equipment that we have. We have a lot of older equipment and we have a lot of newer equipment. So it's trying to create that balance.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to have somebody who understands the same amount on the 1970s technology as they do on the 2020s technology, right? Because it's dramatically different. That's really interesting. So, Gregg, anything else you'd like to share with folks? Any advice for folks thinking about getting into a career in facility or asset management, or just anything in general about, your situation and what's going on at UF?
No, I think that, I think a lot of people don't understand what's really entailed in facilities management, and so it's getting those voices out. I have I talk to Lilit Argwal from Apple all the time, and and I tell him we need to get that message out of what does facilities management consist of, because it's not just cleaning and maintenance, right? It's a whole plethora of things where you have to be strategic about things, understand utilities, you got to understand buildings, you have to understand projects. And when you get into this business, it's not where you're just going to walk in and it takes years to learn everything, like especially an institution like the University of Florida, right?
Oh my gosh. You're half the city of Gainesville, right? Pretty much.
And I tell people it's going to take you all of 24 to 30 months to really understand your job. And people will tell me, oh, yeah, it's only going to take me 6 months. And after they've been here for a while, they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that this is, you were true to your word when you say that. And but it's an exciting and it's a challenging business that you don't do the same thing every day. I mean, if you wanted to be doing the same thing every day, you go to a manufacturing plant, right? Or you go to a restaurant or something like that. But if you want different challenges every day, join us in facilities management because it's a great career. And you get to learn a lot of new people. You get to learn vendors, you get to learn network with people, and you can reach out and ask questions and they help you. And, it's just it's an awesome place to be.
That's awesome. Yeah, one of the things that's always attracted me to, I mean, I've always been on the business partner side, not on the actual, institution side. But one of the neat things for me is getting into the back of house, right? Because everybody sees front of house, and front of house is is part of it, and it's a big part of whether it's a hospital or a university. But getting into the back of house and seeing how everything works, I just love kind of getting into to see some of that really neat equipment in those places you wouldn't see, and in labs and things like that, being able to see all the different equipment that's supporting the program. So it's like you say, it's like no 2 days are ever the same. Well, Gregg, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you sharing the insights, telling folks a little bit more about what's going on at UF, and sharing your asset management story. So thanks so much, Gregg. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Bill.
Gregg, thanks again for sharing your story. Managing infrastructure at this scale takes a combination of technical expertise, leadership, and long-term thinking. Your experience highlights how asset management is evolving into a strategic function that helps organizations make smarter decisions about their buildings and infrastructure. Thanks for joining us on Telling Your Asset Management Story.